Hello, my name's Beth, and today I want to talk to you about socks, why I love making them, and how you can too. I made my first sock in January, and since then I haven't been able to stop. I have been averaging about one pair of socks a month alongside all of my other projects. So, this video is about the 5 reasons why I love knitting socks and 5 tips to get you started. The first reason why I love knitting socks so much is because they're so portable. I knit socks predominantly on public transport. I keep a sock project in this small drawstring project bag which I can then put on my wrist and, yeah, knit very easily out of it. With only 1 or 2 balls to keep track on, the project really fits into any handbag or rucksack that I have. If I need a chart or a stitch repeat, then I usually take a screenshot on my phone so that I have something that I can easily glance to while I'm on the move. But usually a lot of patterns are quite memorizable, so I just use the notes app on my phone to tally how many rows I'm doing. And that way I'm not traveling with any extras. The second reason why I love sock knitting is it's really easy to buy for. If I'm at a yarn event and I'm not sure I want to commit to a garment quantity, or I'm on holiday and I want to have a memento of the trip, then a skein of sock yarn is much more packable and a lot less intimidating quantity. And I know I'm going to knit socks, so it really works as a memento. The third reason that I love sock knitting is it's a great way to try out different techniques without committing to a huge project. You can use so many different lace techniques or texture techniques and different stitches in socks. And it's a great way to figure out if you like the look of the pattern as well as if you want to commit to doing something on a larger scale. You can also do this with colour. You're not sure about a colour combination? Try it out in a sock first before taking that colour scheme for a jumper. I love making colourful combinations in socks that I wouldn't necessarily want in a full garment, and I really like incorporating those contrasting colours into my wardrobe, but on a small scale. The fourth reason that I really like sock knitting is they make great presents. I am currently knitting a lot of my family members' socks for Christmas. This has been really great because they don't take me very long. Each pair of socks has taken me on average about 25 days. I've been tailoring the colour and the style of socks to each person that I'm knitting for, and I don't need that many measurements to make sure they fit well. I love that each sock is bespoke to the person I'm making it for, so I think it makes for a really special Christmas gift. The fifth reason that I love knitting socks is there are so many free patterns. I am not against buying a pattern. If you're just starting out and you don't want to commit to a paid pattern because you don't know if you like it, there are so many beautiful free sock patterns. These range from basic vanilla socks to textured socks and lace socks. You can find free patterns for DK weight socks or fingering weight socks. There really are so many free patterns out there to try before you decide whether or not knitting socks is for you. So they're the 5 reasons that I personally love sock knitting, but what 5 things can you do to make the process go a little bit smoother? So my first tip is to start with a DK weight sock. They knit up much quicker. You learn all the same techniques on a DK weight sock as a fingering sock, so you're not missing out. I think the quicker gratification of a DK weight sock will give you that boost and really enjoy the process. Whereas maybe knitting a fingering weight sock first would feel a bit more like a slog when you're also learning the techniques. Just make sure that the DK weight yarn that you choose also has nylon content in it to make your socks more durable. It'd be such a shame to put the effort into making a pair of socks for them to felt on your first or second wear. My second tip for sock knitting is if you find stockinette boring, skip a vanilla sock. My second sock, so my first fingering weight sock, was a vanilla sock, and I found that so hard. I got second sock syndrome really badly. I didn't want to do the second sock, and I had to push myself to finish it. Looking back now and the amount of socks that I've done since, I should have gone for a bit more of a texture pattern, something to keep me interested. My advice would be if you get bored easily, pick something a bit more interesting. My preference is for a lace motif on a sock which has between a 4 to a 12 row repeat. So something that I can memorize fairly easily, but is just a little more interesting than a plain vanilla sock. Tip 3 is find your method of knitting socks. There are quite a few ways you can knit a sock. You have magic loop, DPNs, small circumference needles, and some flexi double-ended needles as well. There are so many to choose from, so if you've tried one technique in the past and it wasn't for you, I would definitely advise changing it up. I don't like magic loop, and the idea of knitting socks on a magic loop was just never going to work for me. So that was the first time that I sprung for a small circumference circular knitting needle. I find knitting on a small circumference needle for socks really easy and just makes the process a lot smoother. I then swapped to DPNs to do both the heel and the toe. I got these really small DPNs. Shende. I got these really small DPNs which are perfect for doing the toe on public transport because it means they're not poking out as much. And I was using these to do the heel of my socks as well, but I found it got a bit dangerous because the length of them only just fits all of the heel stitches, especially when you're doing something like a German short row heel. So very recently, I've actually sprung for these double-pointed knitting needles, which, as you can see, are a lot longer, but also not as long as regular ones. So these have really made the sock knitting experience for me much smoother. So finding my small circumference needle, which is perfect for the body of the sock, and then finding the right tools for knitting the different parts of the sock. So I've really managed to smooth out that whole process for myself. Another technique that you can try, especially if you suffer a lot from second sock syndrome, is knitting two socks simultaneously, be that on two separate needles or using the magic loop to knit both at the same time. I have not tried either of those techniques. The way I get over second sock syndrome is to cast the second sock on immediately after I finish the first. And then because it's the only thing in my bag, I am forced to then keep going with the second sock. But I find if I delay the cast on of the second sock, I am more likely to just scroll on my phone on the tube rather than actually start it. My fourth tip for knitting socks is to feel empowered to modify the pattern. There are so many ways that you can modify a sock pattern. They really are just recipes rather than set in stone instructions. If you have a preferred way to knit your cuff, whether that be a twisted rib or a 2x2, then sub it in if your sock pattern doesn't have it. If there is a heel type that you want to try that's not in the pattern, have a look for a tutorial and sub it in. If you want to add your own colorwork chart to a vanilla sock to jazz it up, that is totally something that you can do. Also changing things like the length of the sock. If you don't have enough yarn to make a full ankle sock, or you prefer short socks over long socks, then length is one of the easiest things that you can modify in a sock pattern. If you don't like the idea of knitting two of the same socks, why don't you jazz it up? This is quite fun, especially in colour work, where you can use the alternating colour scheme in the second sock, and that might help with some enjoyment. So use stitches and styles and construction methods that make you happy and work for you. My last tip for knitting socks is to treat yourself to a nice sock yarn. I actually had my first sock yarn in my stash for years before I learned to knit socks. This ball of yarn became almost like a promise to myself that one day I would teach myself how to knit socks. Socks are a great excuse to get yourself a beautiful hand-dyed yarn or a novelty yarn. And it doesn't matter if you don't come to it right away. You can come to it in your own time. But having that dedicated sock yarn in your stash could give you the inspiration to start when you're ready. So I thought I'd end this video with 5 pattern recommendations. All of these 5 patterns I have knitted myself and would very much vouch for them. The first pattern is the DK Weight Vanilla Socks by the Crazy Sock Lady. These were my very first sock pattern. They were a brilliant way to get started. The Crazy Sock Lady actually writes quite a few beginner guides to knitting socks and actually tailors each construction method. So if you're knitting on DPNs, small circulars, or magic loop, she has a vanilla pattern for each one. But for this one, I just went for the standard DK sock pattern. I really enjoyed it. My second sock pattern recommendation is the Petal Drop Socks by Florence Miller. This pattern is written as a beginner pattern for people who don't want to knit vanilla socks. The lace motif on these socks are both beautiful and engaging. Plus, there is an accompanying video to really take you through the steps as you go. So this is a great alternative for beginners that isn't a vanilla sock. My third pattern recommendation is the Jomo socks by Rachel Fletcher. These are a really interesting design with a cable running down the outside of each sock. So they're a great way of trying out a cable design without doing an all over cable design. They're also a great way to show off a variegated yarn. I knitted these up in a Gusto wool, which had a really fun rainbow gradient. And this pattern was a really cool way of incorporating a little bit of interest into a predominantly vanilla sock pattern. So it really shows off the yarn. My next pattern recommendation is the Satyr socks by Maja Carlson. They are a great way of trying out a little bit of color work and also some interesting techniques. There's a Latvian braid in this pattern, but it's totally skippable if that's not what you want to do. I particularly love the leaf motif that goes around the ankle for this sock. And my last pattern recommendation for socks is the Ario socks by Lisa Schmidt. I absolutely adore this pattern. I've already made it twice and I will no doubt make it again. It is a beautiful lace motif, which is over a 12-row repeat, which may sound like a bit much, but it is still a memorizable pattern. The stitch pattern is quite involved, but it makes it incredibly engaging, and the socks knit up so quickly. In the pattern, it includes instructions for both a German short row heel and a slip stitch heel, so it really does guide you through whatever construction you want to make. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about socks. I hope you've come away with some inspiration or managed to convince you to try your first pair of socks. Please let me know your favorite sock pattern in the comments. I am always on the lookout for new sock patterns. I currently have the Fioriti socks by Lisa Schmidt and the Sinope socks by Audrey Borrego on my to knit list, and I have the yarn ready. I cannot wait to cast both of these on. But for now, that's all. And I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Bye!